Hello and welcome to GPTV on Tuesday the 12th of September. My name's Philip Kingston.
And I'm Gary Peer.
Gary, we've got an interesting period coming up. We've got the grand final coming up. We've got the whole football season, but we are in the middle of spring. Massive weekend last weekend, but it's going to peter out for the next couple of weeks before it takes off in October. Are you pumped? Are you ready? Are you ready, set, go?
I'm ready to rock and roll, Phil, and September, I can feel the spring vibes. I've got to say that, we've been friends for a long time, but I think our friendship's going to be really tested on Friday night, Philip, when Carlton play Melbourne.
Yes.
I'm not sure when our teams last met in a final. It would be an interesting stat. It would have been maybe a long, long time ago, but... it's been a good ride, but I've got to say it's war on Friday night. Who do you tipping?
Look, it's hard to not tip Melbourne.
It is hard.
And I like to think I'm a clear thinker, Gary, and I'd like to think that this is not just me being a loyal fan, but on paper, technically, we're going to beat you. Having said that, Melbourne is a heartbreaking club. They do let you down on a regular basis. So I don't know. Is it Carlton? Is it Melbourne? Is it Melbourne? Is it Carlton? Melbourne on paper, Carlton if you want to go with just heart.
Well, they say in this Carlton theme song, we're the team that never let you down. And then the other part goes, until we lose, and then we do let you down. But hopefully they won't, although I reckon Melbourne going to be very hard to beat. Anyway, you did lose last week. We did win. That's why we're meeting.
Yes.
But it's getting to the nitty-gritty, Phil. And, of course, this is an interesting time of year because in and around...
Did you go to the footy, by the way?
Did
you go?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
How was the noise?
Crazy.
Sitting in the MCG, which is a massive place, and I think you were sitting right up the top. You didn't get any prime corporate box seats, thanks to Main and REA for not coming through on that. But ultimately, is the noise incredible?
As it turns out, Phil, I did get a corporate box, actually, which I'm not going to talk to you about, but it wasn't through those eyes, but I did get a corporate box. No, I'm not going to tell you.
No,
I'm not going to tell you that.
I saw your daughter took a photo from up in that. So
she was up in the nosebleeds.
You went.
Yeah.
And you were happy to take the largesse of some of some corporate person wanting to sway your opinion on some important subject. So one night at the footy will do it.
Yeah, it was a little bit like that, Phil. I'm happy to be bought. But, she was with the real people and she said to me, Dad, I never knew how feral Carlton supporters can be because, Carlton supporters are, they're a kind of interesting lot. But when we're winning up and about, we are a pack of cocky buggers, and that's how we were on Friday night.
So I suppose the only noise that you heard in the corporate box was, "Excuse me, sir, would you like the Chardonnay or the Pinot?"
The clinking of glasses, a little bit of ice going into some of the mixed drinks.
Or somebody complaining that their steak was a little bit overdone.
The oysters were quite right, 100%. There weren't enough there. They had all this beautiful food there.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I don't eat any of it. Right? It was all fish. Then the party pies came with the sausage rolls. I was so happy. Well done to Carlton and exciting time of year. Well, this weekend, Philip, coming up, just
so who was the boss?
Have some real estate. I'm not telling you that. I'm not telling you that.
Was it somebody that supplies Gary Peer and Associates that I was meant to get some level of share of?
You know what? Maybe you should read your emails.
Or was this outside your...
Maybe you should read your emails sometimes, Anyway, what I can say, Philip, is this weekend upcoming is a very interesting one because, of course, it is the Jewish New Year. So there's a lot of auctions that aren't taking place in and around Caulfield North and St Kilda East and Caulfield Proper and Caulfield South. So that's a day out. And then, of course, we've got the grand final coming up. So we've got a couple of weekends of not much and all the action in between and around it.
Yes.
And there's still, of course, open for inspections happening in and around the marketplace. So not many auctions to review, only a few of them, and they are in Carnegie, Philip. But let's talk about some of the sales. But before we do that, I want to ask you a question, my sore-fingered friend.
Yes, Gary.
How's that going, by the way?
It's
on the way out.
No, it's much improved. Yep. But it is niggling.
Have you knocked it? Like if I flicked it now, would that hurt?
It'd kill me.
Yeah,
it's niggling and it's uncomfortable. And I was saying before, it's just I'm not on my game when I'm feeling off. I'm not on my game. But then again, Gary, when I'm not on my game,
you're better than
it's
many
like
that are
somebody else's best day out.
Yeah, of course, Philip. And modesty is one of your great strengths and one of your great attributes.
It's not about modesty, Gary. It's about truth. And some people, Gary, as you well know, cannot handle the truth.
Sometimes they're conflated very closely together, the two, Phil. But, it looks like you were on your game of the weekend because I saw you with some fine performances out there in the market. But I'd be glad to see that off. When's that coming off? Because it's been a bit of an agitation, hasn't
Probably
it?
another week, Gary.
Yeah, good
Another
luck.
week.
Good
Yeah,
luck.
thank you.
Be
thank
careful
you.
of the sun.
And you know, the
viewers.
worst part about it, Gary, is that finger was actually my best feature.
Oh, yeah, I know. That was, everyone loved you for that finger. In fact, you know, a lot of people would sign auctions and they say, look, you can trust me as your agent.
So I used to be going, would you like to make him another bid, sir?
No,
And
no,
it was
no,
just
and
my
now-
mesmerising. Isn't it sad when
I
your
know.
ring finger is your best attribute?
It's all over, isn't it? But it'll be back. Your ring finger will be
It'll
back,
be
and
back.
so will you. Phil, I've got a question for you.
Mind you, my finger will be back,
Yeah.
like the rest of me, with a little bit of plastic surgery. Gary.
Exactly right.
Yeah, isn't that what you meant to say?
Well, I was going to say, I thought it, but I thought maybe you want to say it this time, and you did. Phil, let's talk a little bit about a query and a question that I've got.
Query and a question.
Is a fast sale a good sale?
Well, Gary, it depends. If we make a fast sale, it is a great sale. Often in the marketplace, we see properties sold too quickly, and therefore they haven't had the right level of market exposure. So it depends on who's entrusted with the fast sale.
Yeah, I think, Phil, is a quick sale a good sale? I think I'm going to add a little bit to that. You know, I think, again, you're right in what you say. A little bit of a context around that is if you've got enough buyers to take through a property and you know you have an outstanding offer, Philip,
Yes.
then I think a fast sale or quick sale can be a good sale because let's just say that the property's worth $1 million, you know, let's just say, and you've got 8 buyers and 6 of those buyers are interested and they all say we'll pay 900 and no more, and then someone says I'll pay $1 million, then I think a quick sale is a good sale for the seller, and you know the buyer stood up and made a difference to actually get it. So I think, you know, it's funny, like who wins sometimes? I mean, the buyer doesn't have to go and compete and let the campaign get momentum, so maybe they win. The vendor doesn't have to invest in a whole campaign. Sometimes they win, Phil. So is a quick sale a good sale?
Advocating a quick sale, Gary?
I'm saying, much like you said, with a bit of context, sometimes a quick sale is a good sale, but you must make sure that there is some opportunity for the vendor particularly to get a little bit of flow, a little bit of competition, a little bit of exposure, maybe through a database, if not through...
As a generalisation,
any other way.
Gary, I'm going to answer your question, though,
Yep.
with a great deal of thought,
Yeah,
now
good.
that I've had 60 seconds to really think this through.
Yes.
Because viewers, this is an unscripted show. What comes out of his mouth, we can speculate about, but there's never any workshopping around this.
And it doesn't always make sense.
I personally am not an advocate of the quick, quiet sale.
Yes.
I'm an advocate of taking a product to the marketplace and giving it every level of exposure possible. And I think that there is a lot to be said about making sure that everybody has the opportunity to see it, know of its existence, and inquire about it.
And let it shine in the
that's
market.
it.
Let it have its day in the sun. Well, that's a good opinion, Phil. I'm agreeing with you in part, but also sometimes a quick sale is the best sale and it is a good sale. If you have not more than, I don't think, because some agents, they say, oh, let me just take my one buyer through.
Yes.
And then I think that's more confusing than it is helpful, because if that one buyer wants to buy it, how would you know if that one buyer is the best buyer in the world for that property?
Correct.
Unless
Gary.
you have more than one buyer.
Correct as usual.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we agree. That's good. Sometimes we do.
Finally, it's
We
taken
got there.
us until middle September.
Yeah, exactly right. We found something we agreed on. I knew if we were friends for long enough,
We'd
that
get
somewhere
there.
in our
We would
40,
get there.
40
I
something.
think maybe that's the secret sauce,
Yeah.
Gary, that
Yeah.
we're not just so similar in the way that we see the world, but
Exactly right.
you come at from the left, I come at it from the right, we go round
Exactly
in a
right.
circle, we come back through the middle, we stir the pot, we juggle the balls,
Exactly right.
and then we come to an opinion that has had the great benefit of both our incredible intellects combining to create magic.
What a lot of rubbish that was. Anyway, but you come at it through culture, through style, and I come from it through
a sausage roll,
through
in a corporate box.
racehorses, cigars, and a corporate box. Yeah. Anyway, which you didn't get an invitation
No, I
to,
did
by the
not.
way. We'll talk about it later.
We will definitely
Yeah,
talk
exactly
about
right.
it later.
And I won't be in trouble because it didn't come through the business. Just so.
But I think everything comes through the business, Gary, because I'm out there creating so much excitement, and because it's Gary Pear's name on the door, you tend to get the freebies.
Well, I get off of them sometimes, and I don't mind that, Phil, but I would always share them with you. You know I would never not do that. John, our number one viewer, he's in town. He's in Melbourne. He's moved
how
from the
good
US.
is-
So
how
I'm
good is
catching
John?
up with John for a coffee. He's got his beautiful poems that he sends us every week, which are fantastic.
I saw John out over the weekend with his
Did
lovely
you?
partner.
I haven't seen him. I only saw him with a mask.
Yeah,
You saw him unmasked.
No, unmasked. He's rather a nice looking man.
he is a nice looking man, John.
Quite of an intelligent looking man, which is kind of remarkable for somebody that watches GPTV
I know.
every week.
I wonder, he's talking about Melbourne, some of the Melbourne perspectives, Phil, of his view. The sun is up, the weather looks fine, my head is hurting, are those bottles mine? Who knew Kew was such a wild town? Out again tonight, might just tone it down. So
Well,
it's very
John,
good. It's one of his paragraphs.
as they say,
he knows how to enjoy life.
If you're going to be living in far Q, you're going to have a headache.
Yeah, you might be better off to move a bit closer into near Q, where it's not as remote, Phil.
Correct.
We also had an email from Daniel, who is a very intelligent solicitor who watches the show, and he talked about the fact that we talked about 18% interest rates.
This is
and he said, it was interesting, Phil, and I like people that take us on, don't you?
Yep, I do.
Plenty of people do take us on. And what about your car? We'll talk about that in a minute as well. But because there's more feedback. Daniel says, who's a smart lawyer, says, you talk about 18% being high, it's quite misleading because average mortgage balances were significantly lower then, leaving borrowers with much greater capacity.
Earnings. So,
that's right.
Listen, what's his name?
You didn't let me finish, Daniel. Irene, can you just have a chat to him again? He didn't let me, talks over me again.
So Daniel, there's no question you have a point, and there is
Can I make the point? He said average mortgage balances were significantly lower then, leaving borrowers with much greater capacity to absorb increased repayments.
So can I give the context to which Daniel is?
Because he's got a point.
So we said a couple of weeks ago or last week that interest rates back in the, I think it was the early 90s, mid-90s,
late 80s, early 90s,
were 17 and 18%.
That was fun.
And Gary made the connection that it was actually harder back then.
Yes.
Now, Daniel has quite rightly said yes, but we've got lower interest rates, but the average mortgage is significantly higher. Now, if we looked at this, back in the early 90s, wages were a lot less.
Yes.
So the question is, and if there is an academic watching the show...
An actuary maybe.
This is an actuarial concept, because the reality is that lower wages back then, higher interest rates, absolutely definitely lower mortgage balances.
Yes.
But is it the same versus today versus back then? It probably is much the same, except I think Daniel is right that the greater percentage, the greater mortgage balance combined with this higher interest rate, it all gets back to average weekly earnings.
It all compares back to what you earn, Phil. That's
Correct.
what you're saying. It all compares back. And I think, we're talking about different levels of pain. I think the most painful thing for people who bought, and I'm one of them, who bought on X interest rate and then had 10 increases, I think that's very, very difficult, Phil, for a lot of people.
If there is an actuary watching the show...
And there'd be lots.
Here is a challenge for you.
Yeah.
Let's do the maths, because this is just a purely mathematical equation. Average earnings, average mortgage balance, average interest rate versus this time back in 1992.
And with the greatest respect to you, Daniel, you're obviously very intelligent, but you're a lawyer, right? So, you're limited, right? And we're just salespeople that like to think that we're something more than that, but we're really not. So let's just call it as that, and let's see if there is an actuary, because actuaries love this show. We know that they watch all around the world, Phil.
We do.
So any actuary watching, if you are
actually
watching this show, then please let us know who you are, and we'll tell you to do something better with your time.
John, if you can put together a little paragraph poem about actuaries that are actually watching the show, cool. If you can get all of that to rhyme, we will read out that verse on
very, very happily. Let's talk about the weekend that was. I had a bit of a fun. Again, the other feedback we got was the person who emailed me at 2:16 in the morning saying, why does your director, one of your directors, Philip Kingston, his name is, has a very large Range Rover. Did we talk about this on the show?
No, we do.
And why do we need Mark his name? And why did he need to drive a car that big? And my thing is that why are you emailing me at 2:16 in the morning to ask me such a question?
He followed it up.
But it bothered him.
He followed it up with
did.
sending the same email to about 10 of our team.
Yep.
Now, here's the thing, the question I would ask you viewers. When a troll is trolling, because quite clearly,
don't be like that.
Quite clearly,
curious.
I think one email is curious,
yes,
right, although unnecessary.
Maybe so.
2 emails to 10 people is trolling.
Yeah, and now hanging outside your house, that's stalking.
So I am resisting the urge to engage with the troll. Yeah. So if anybody understands social media that's watching the show, if you could give us some feedback to engage with a troll or not to engage with a troll, that is the question.
And I welcome all views and curious people, Philip. I'm going to say that the view of being dismissive about this person having a go is just a curious person that wants to expand He's mine.
I'm not sure that somebody that sends you an email at 2 a.m.
Yeah, 2:16.
following it up with another effectively 10 emails.
Yes. No, not 10 emails. One email to 10 people.
One email to 10 people, Gary. That is 10 emails.
Do you know what? He's very curious about your car. I reckon he might want to buy it. And I've got to say that if you follow that through, imagine if we said to everybody, why do you live in a house that big when you're only 2 people? I mean, he could actually follow that through, and we could employ him.
Do you know what? A little shout out to, if you are watching this show,
Mark. Yep.
Right, Mark.
Yep.
If you're watching this show, here's a challenge.
Yeah.
Ring me up. Let's have a coffee.
Yep.
I will be civil, polite, and engaging throughout that coffee because I would like to understand where you come from.
And I would like to engage you as a telemarketer to start approaching people who are in big houses and say, rather than worry about his big car, worry about people in big houses and say, why the hell do you need such a big house for? It's time to sell. I think he could be an asset. You turn things around beautifully, don't we?
We do.
Exactly right. See, from somebody that we thought was a troll, he's now a friend, he's on the payroll. There you go. Let's move on, Philip. I had an interesting experience at a commercial auction that we did, a series auction.
Yes,
Philip,
in Puckle Street, Mooney Ponds, the home of Edna Everidge, Gary.
It was, Dame Edna, exactly right. Her own country area, Phil, where she lived with her husband, Norm, with a prostate problem. But, Phil, got to say, I rocked up because it was at Leonda.
You rocked up? You mean you drove there,
Okay,
Gary.
I drove there.
You rocked up. What
I rocked up
15?
Yeah, 15. I rocked up. So I arrived at Leonda.
Yes, you did, via your car. You drove to Leonda, got out of the car. There was nothing rocking up about your sense of arrival.
Via my small and non-wasteful car. Well, no big car for me. So my 2-seater car, Phil. So I came to the auction. Anyway, I got there and there was nowhere to park. And it was a signature auction where there was about 6 or 7 properties altogether.
Yes.
Anyway, I saw a spot and I thought, I'll go behind that car. And I thought, now, I don't know, that car's right at the front here. And there's something different about that car that doesn't really match with the actual auction. The car was a hearse.
Oh,
and
really?
it just so happened that at the same time as the signature auction at Leonda, there was a funeral happening at the very, very same time. So I thought, this is not the death of the commercial market, is it? Because it sold really well.
But Gary, the auctioneer that passed in a property, did any property pass in?
I don't know, Phil. I don't think ours was the first one there.
Maybe in the pre-auction meeting, one of the agents had said to the vendor, "Look, I'm not sure that it's going to sell," and that was his little reminder to that auctioneer and that agent that should you pass my property in, there is a car waiting. And
funnily enough, the rest of the auctions were all in Carlton, Phil. You know, and there was a couple of big guys there that I've sort of seen before in the paper. No, that part's not true. But anyway, the hearse was there. So I thought that was interesting timing, Phil. But anyway, it sold well. Well done to Simon Radolnik. We did sell that property for $1,600,000 together with our friends, our commercial friends, Gross Waddell. So well done to Michael Gross and the team down there. Phil, let's move on and speak a little bit about Hopkins Street, McKinnon, because that was my first auction on Saturday morning. It went particularly well. It was incredibly popular. The vendor was, this is how I love, technology today. And, I'm a dinosaur, but the vendor...
You absolutely are.
I am a dinosaur, and there's something good about old-fashioned values, Phil, which we can talk about another time. But the vendor was in South Africa on safari, and I FaceTimed the vendor who watched the entire auction.
Wow.
I didn't.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thunk it, Phil?
FaceTime.
Anyway,
amazing. In another country with Wi-Fi.
Like, amazing.
Incredible.
I know. I can't believe it either, Phil. Or as we say in South Africa, I can't believe it, man. Anyway, thought we'd get around 1.5 and it ran well above that. When we put the price guide up, Phil, it just kept going. And we thought we might get around 1.5, but it went for way, way more. 2 at 10 Blair Street, Bentley. Well done to Leon Guzenfitter and the team there, John and Ben and all of the team who sold that property, $1,335,000 for a townhouse in Blair Street. I stopped on the way back. There's a bakery, fantastic bakery, Artisan Bakery in Centre Road.
Oh, yeah.
Have you been there?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, they sold out the rye bread. It's called Artisan, I think.
Is it Artisan?
Yeah, I think so.
If it's not, we'll get the name up on screen.
Yep.
I stopped in there and there's queues out the
front.
Oh, yeah.
There was queues
there.
I
love the way that this country now queues for good bread.
It's like Russia in the sort of 50s, isn't it, Phil? It's like that now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole other story. Let's move on.
I'm not sure that's the connection to
make. I don't think that was what you were talking about.
Actually, quite funny, Gary.
Yeah, it's quite quick. Unscripted, Sometimes I got one in me, Phil, and that's probably it for this episode. Phil, 1003 Glen Huntly Road, Caulfield. Well, here you go. An unprecedented house.
Having said that, Gary, look, I think we had 5 people bidding, sold so far over reserve it wasn't funny. But having said that, all that sale now does is represent the fact that if you do something fabulous, people will flock to it, and that house, hard to put a value on it. And interestingly, when we deconstruct that sale and try to justify the sales price, you look at it and you go, well, cost of the land and the cost of the building. But sometimes you've got to set these records for other people to have the confidence to do that sort of thing. And a shout out to the owner of that property, who is an architect, I think, did the most incredible renovation.
Well, it was an unprecedented price, but it was an unprecedented property, Philip, and you can't always pick what those are going to go for. And it was incredibly popular. Someone actually just turned up on the day as well. It was sent from one of our other agents to that auction and said, this is just what I want. They were the underbidder. But Phil loves St Kilda West, and we sold a wonderful apartment there. Well done to Leo Barr and Daniel, who did that. Daniel Peer did that together. That's a terrific little studio apartment, Philip, just in Park Street in St Kilda West, sold for $400,000. So we like to talk about small, big properties.
They're all important.
They're all important. Murrumbina Road, well, Jack Slater.
Small fish are often the sweetest, Gary.
Phil, if you eat fish, which I don't. But Phil, 239B Murrumbina Road, Murrumbina, sold for $1,250,000, Phil. That $250 got it over the line. So well done to Jack Slater. Murrumbina, what a great area it is. And we just keep kicking goals there. We love it. Love it. Phil, Sunday was a busy day. I had the pleasure of meeting Arlene in Ashgrove, 1 at 8 Ashgrove, which sold under, again, intense competition. 5 bidders going for that, and it sold for $1,465,000. So well done to the buyer, who's known to us, and well done to the seller also. Now, that seller, by the way, Phil, that seller was a school teacher of mine when I was in my primary years, and actually was a bit hesitant to entrust us with the sale of her property because she knew I spent a lot of my early school years in the corner with the hat on, the dunce hat on.
Yes,
Gary. Does anyone today know about the dunce hat?
And the red welts across your...
Yes, about my legs and hands.
Correct. I was going to say your little buttocks.
It didn't hurt, I mean, it hurt, but it didn't hurt developing you into a better person. Do you think we can bring it back?
I was caned often at school.
Absolutely.
And, it's just you get the cane across your fingers.
Yeah, you lick your hand first.
Well, it's kind of like, okay, is that the best you've got? Is it, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Vice Principal? Is that the best you've got? And you just missed.
Yeah,
that was always the funniest.
Yeah.
Always the funniest, because it was a serious moment, of course. Yeah. Like our children, they don't even know what we're talking about. But to stand there,
with your hand out
there like that, right? And you knew it was going to hurt us, right?
It was coming
but at the same time, it was outrageously funny.
Yeah.
So you've got these two conflicting emotions. You've got this, oh my God, goodness,
we're going to copy it.
Yep. And I can't stop laughing at the same time, this nervous laughter. But when Mr. Monty... Mr. Monty, if you're watching this, you were ridiculous when you had that cane in your hand.
That's right. You thought you were smart.
But I had to stop myself laughing at Mr. Monty because he'd miss. Right? He'd take six misses for every one hit. So when you get 6 canes,
and then by the time they get you, you're laughing so much you forget how sore it was. But I used to pull my hand away.
I can remember the moment. I can remember being in his office like it was yesterday.
Isn't it amazing that we went through
Mr.
that?
Monty, the psychopath.
Could you imagine anybody going through that today? Imagine what would happen if somebody, a principal or vice principal, like laid a hand on you. Anyway, let's move on. But you know what? We had it coming and we deserved it, I suppose, in those days.
Every cane we got.
Anyway,
we truly deserved it.
Well done to the vendor of 1 at 8 Ashgrove. She obviously must have thought somehow it was okay for me to actually do the auction and for our company to get the job. And it sold for well over the range, Philip. So that was amazing. Sold for well over the 1.2 to 1.3.
All right, let's move this on, Gary. Let's wrap this show up. It's gone on for too long. It's been rambling.
4 Palm Court, Phil. You sold that one undisclosed, but the range was fun.
Shout out to the vendors there, who are the most delightful people, together with their 2 little boys that they brought to the auction, who are little characters.
1.3 to 1.43 was the range, Philip, undisclosed, but let's just say upper end of the range area that it sold for. And 15 Hart Street, Phil, was the way to bring down the curtain on a busy Sunday.
A thumping auction, wasn't it? We
thumped
had
indeed,
5
Phil.
people bidding there.
We did. Well done to the buyer and seller alike, Philip. That was sold again over the range. The actual range sort of went back a bit because the interest wasn't that great, and then we sold it for well above the range that was
It's funny, isn't it?
Funny how it works
some properties perform week 1 and don't perform week 2. So you've got to be constantly monitoring these things, Gary. But shout out to the vendor, shout out to the buyers. Lovely family bought that property.
Let's move on, Phil. Got a couple of auctions this weekend, a very quiet one. We've just got the 6 at 13 Holloway Street, Ormond. David Thompson's the auction.
Well, Gary, that's a great property, isn't it? And that is one bedroom, one bathroom, and a car space. Great. I love those because they're bite size. You know, they can be great first homes, they can be second homes, they can be investments. I just love them. And over time, you just get great capital growth.
You do, Phil. Well, Rail Street, Carnegie, Dan Dyson's handling that one as well. Graham Callan auctions, this terrific 2-bedroom apartment, Phil.
Gary, 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Terrific outlooks from the balcony terrace. Beautiful timber floors. And we love that pocket of Carnegie.
A couple of quick properties to talk about, Phil, just before we go. One of those is 16 Armadale Street, Armadale. Now, Phil, we are both familiar with this property. I've got to say, I love it. It's a deep block of land. It's in a great location. The house is workable. I don't know if anyone was going to buy that to just live in as is. I think not. But somebody will go and make their future masterpiece.
Gary, we call this a blank canvas and a blue chip location because really Armadale Street in Armadale, you've got the tram at Wattletree Road, you've got the Armadale train station, you've got Malvern Central, you've got High Street, you've got Glenferrie Road, tram and Dandenong Road. Armadale Street is just the best position, together with the Coin Laundry Cafe, which is and Juliet, the little drop in, get a coffee, get some bread.
Yes, is that next door to the Aquarium?
Yeah, it's a great little pocket there, and that you can renovate the house subject to council approval. You could pull it down subject to council approval. You could do a minor refurbishment subject to council approval. You could go there and breathe subject to council approval.
Yes, yeah.
But as long as you get council approval, Gary, you can do just about anything
you want, anywhere in the world. Phil. Anyway, the attention developers, because not only 16 is available, but 18, which is right next door to Phil, because they work that way, 16, 18, is also coming up. So developers, take note and pay attention, because you might be able to buy the 2. 18 is a different home. It's a very, very lovely home, Phil, 3-bedroom home. So 2 houses in absolute blue chip Armadale. We want to let you know about that. Talking about blue chip, Philip Parker Street in Brighton East is another wonderfully positioned home, wonderfully positioned street, a great home with so many flexible options. Philip, tell us about it.
Well, Gary, 715 square metres of land, so you know it's hard to get a better block than that. This is 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, plenty of off-street car parking, a beautifully livable home, but again, a bit of a blank canvas. Speaking about a property that's not a blank canvas, Gary, because the canvas has already been painted upon, and it's the most beautiful painting, is 55B Bundeera Road. Well, this has got to be the big Mac of property like this, because it's the one with everything, 4 bedrooms, 3 magnificent bathrooms, everything that opens and shuts, every conceivable luxury, finished to the highest possible standard, including the most incredible north-facing alfresco entertainment area, which then looks over your pool and your garden. Talk about a property with everything. It's hard to think that there is anything more that you could put in this home other than your own furniture, and you'd better bring some nice furniture, because this property demands a beautiful interior style.
It does indeed, Phil. And being handled by Leon Gusenfitter and Jan Dosen, our agent who speaks Mandarin, English and German. So you can say g'day, ni hao and auf Wiedersehen when you walk out the door, Phil. So not many people can say that too that will know what you're talking about.
No, that's it, Gary. Very important to be able to nail those 3 salutations.
Exactly right. You've got to do it right, Phil. That's a big wrap in this spring edition, the sunshine.
Rambling edition, Gary. Rambling.
It's a bit rambling, Phil, but you know, we're going to talk about a few different things. You know,
you're rambling. Even your wrap up is a rambling wrap up.
It's a rambling wrap, Phil, but that is a wrap on GPTV. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. I'm Gary Pearce.
I'm Philip Kingston. Have a wonderful week.